opportunity to receive feedback and try to bring forward an improved application in this year's cycle. As our district staff of over 40 different folks evaluated this application, there were several things that came forward as strengths or parts of the application that were considered to be exemplary, that they made sure to note in the evaluation process itself. And before we get into too many of the specifics, I will allow Ms. Cindy Fisher, our coordinator for educational enhancements, to also offer some thoughts too.
Ms. Fisher?
Well, you all, obviously we've been through this already this morning, and so you know that we have some existing charters and existing contracted sites, which we've shared with you. And you are also all aware that this entire process is regulated by the state. The application itself, the template for the application, and the rubric by which it is evaluated. The applications were due to us and were received by February 1st, and then we held capacity interviews with this applicant as well as the others on March 4th this year to help to clarify any questions that the reviewers might have had. We've already discussed the process this morning. It is a rigorous process, but it needs to be a rigorous process because we want to set any applicant that we approve up for a successful opening and a successful experience with Volusia County students.
And now, before I move forward, I will add some pieces into evidence. First and foremost, we have attachment A, which is the application from Florida East Coast Charter School, and that will be our first exhibit.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sieber. Do you have any objection to what has been identified as attachment A?
No objection.
All right, thank you. Hearing no objection, then I recommend to the chair that attachment A be received into evidence marked as district's document number 1 and put into the possession, control, and custody of the secretary for all future purposes.
Okay, then without objection, the board approves entering and receiving Exhibit 1. And are we calling that document 1 or attachment 1?
Exhibit 1 is fine.
Exhibit 1. Sounds good.
Let's try to keep it
that
straight.
Will be known as, the application is Exhibit 1.
It is. The next document is the executive summary, so that will be Exhibit 2.
Okay, and that's marked as attachment B as in boy?
Correct.
All right. Mr. Sieber, do you have any objection to what has been identified as attachment B to the agenda?
No objection.
All right, thank you. With no objection, then, I recommend to the chair that the document entitled Executive Summary of Charter School Application Evaluation Instrument, identified as attachment B to the agenda, be received as district exhibit number 2 and put into the possession, custody, and control of the secretary for all future purposes.
All right, then without objection, the board will move forward with that, and we are in receipt of Exhibit 2.
Next is Exhibit 3, and that's the Florida Charter School Application Evaluation Instrument.
Okay, and that's attachment C as in Charlie?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Sieber, any objection to what's been identified as attachment C to the agenda?
No objection.
All right, thank you. There being no objection, I recommend to the chair that the document previously identified as attachment C be received into evidence as district exhibit number 3 and placed into the care, custody, and control of the secretary for all future purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. So without objection, the board is in receipt of that. That would be Exhibit number 3.
Exhibit number 4 is attachment D, the capacity interview transcript.
Identified as attachment D to the agenda, be received into evidence as district exhibit number 4, and be placed into the care, custody, and control of the secretary for all future purposes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doran. And without objection, the board is in receipt then of Exhibit number 4.
And exhibit number 5 is attachment E. It's the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, any objection, Mr. Siebert, to the PowerPoint presentation?
No objection.
All right, no objection being registered. I recommend to the chair that the document previously identified as attachment E to the agenda be received into evidence as district exhibit number 5, placed in the care, custody, and control of the secretary for all future purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. And without objection, the board approves that we are in receipt of exhibit number 5.
Thank you. As we look at the evaluation and the ranking, please note again, this is a state-mandated evaluation instrument where our evaluators are required to say that the applicant either met, partially met, or does not meet in each area of interest. And there are 22 different standards overall on this instrument. Only 19 are actually evaluated. So when we have standards and we talk about these standards, they are, again, mandated by the state. There's no additional guidance or area for interpretation on the part of the district. The instrument just is the instrument that we work with. This applicant met 68% of the standards as put forth in the state mandated instrument. That's a total of 13 out of the 19 standards that district staff reviewed. 4 standards were ranked as partially meets, or 21%, while the final 2 standards were warranted as ranking of does not meet. Some of the strengths of the application, as I noted, were as follows. The target student population would be drawn mostly from Ormond Beach and Holly Hill as identified by a distance measured from their facility location. The school identifies as a local community school and is projecting less than 600 students at full enrollment. Support for the project capacity is adequate. The applicant has a focus on the MTSS process and uses that to drive school improvement. The applicant describes the PD that the principal will receive in order to carry out their vision. It is laudable that all teachers will be encouraged to obtain gifted endorsement. The applicant is to be commended for recognizing that behavioral expectations need to be explicitly taught and for giving behavioral development equal weight to academic development. So these were some of the strengths that our district reviewers put on the evaluation instrument. Now, what we will do as we move forward, you'll see that these are the standards that were met by the application. So everything from mission and guiding principles all the way down. We've got some a good number here that the district marked as meets. For the partially meets and the does not meet, we will have district staff come up one by one and address their individual concerns for that standard as we move forward. So our first speaker to come to the dais will be for Standard 4 curriculum plan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Persis, school board members, Superintendent Russell, Rachel Hazel, Interim Chief Academic Officer.
Yeah, just pull that mic a little bit closer,
Sure.
Ms.
Is this
Hazel.
a little better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Our team did review the 4th section, which was curriculum. There were a few concerns within that. The first was that there was no clear curriculum as far as like materials go. We did ask questions at the interview, and a lot relied on the principal that they would hire. The other concern was no PE teacher was included in the application. There was nothing identified for a PE teacher. Some of the strengths, of course, the standards are the standards. They would be following those standards. But those were our primary concerns, had to do with PE and with providing the clear curriculum outline.
Thank you.
Next is Standard 16, facilities.
Good evening, Mr.
It's
Good
not
afternoon.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just don't rush it.
Confusing.
Come on.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sarah Lee Morrissey, and I am the Planning and Construction Director for the school system. It's unfortunate that review of Section 16 resulted in a partially meets rather than the meets, because it is unusual when we get a charter school coming forward that actually has a known facility that they intend to occupy, and that is absolutely a strength with this application. Unfortunately, the lease that was included and that was lacking in last year's submittal, a lease was included. However, the startup loan that is referenced and was discussed during the capacity interview indicated that the collateral for that startup loan was going to be the furniture, fixtures, and equipment within the facility. And in the lease that is included in the charter application, it states specifically that the contents of the facility cannot be used for collateral. And so that was the basis for the partially meets.
Thank you.
The next standard is food service, Standard 18.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robinson Prime, Coordinator, Schoolway Cafe. One of the items that came to our attention with regard to this application is with regard to approving free and reduced applications. This particular applicant will, according to the application, plan to use their own vendor to process all their meals and serve. And they did mention that they were going to work with Volusia County Schools to verify student eligibility. Unfortunately, if they will be using their own vendors, typically that process is done through that vendor whoever is going to supply the meal and keep accountability of that. So that was number one. And the second thing we noted was the way that their reimbursable meals were laid out on their application wasn't clearly identified as to the reimbursable rates broken down for breakfast or lunch. So it was hard to identify how much they were going to receive per meals and what was going for what. So whether the reimbursement was going for the meals and what does any extra fund within that number was going to apply towards. So I think it's just a matter of clarifying what those numbers were, as well as making sure that they have someone to approve their applications as opposed to Volusia County Schools.
Got it. Thank you.
The next section is 21, financial management and oversight.
Good afternoon, Mr. Persis, board members, and Mr. Russell. This is Deb Muller, Chief Financial Officer. I have a partially meets the standard recommendation on this section. The applicant stated that the board will receive cash and budget performance projections monthly during the first year beginning in September. Board monitoring should begin immediately upon startup. The applicant also states that after the first year, they will be provided to the board as needed. Board oversight should continue on a monthly basis through year 5 at minimum to assure financial viability of the charter school. Also, the applicant's insurance policy stated as they would contract for does not meet our board policy in the following areas. Property insurance does not include 100% of replacement value, and fidelity bonds do not have a minimum limit of $500,000. School leaders, errors, and omissions are not at minimum of $1 million per occurrence and $2 million aggregate. I know that they did state during their interview that they would bring that into compliance should they be approved.
Thank you, Ms. Muller.
Oh, yeah. Deb, come back.
Number 20, budget. This section does not meet the standard. The applicant provided documentation, as Ms. Morrissey noted, the availability of a startup loan of $40,000. The amount of this loan appears that it may be insufficient for startup since they have an ending balance at the end of the startup period of just $136, which does not, in my opinion, leave enough room for contingencies. And also, as she said, the startup loan states that furniture, fixtures, and equipment will be used as collateral. I had asked about that furniture, fixtures, and equipment, where that would come from during the capacity interview. And the response was that it would be the items in the current building that they were planning on leasing, and then that lease specifically prohibits that as submitted. As well as the fund balance at the end of the startup period is $136. And then the fund balance at the end of year one is less than 1% and is insufficient to allow for contingencies that may arise. Additionally, under both the 75% and 50% enrollment plans that were submitted, the fund balance at the end of years 1 and 2 are less than 1% and less than 2% in year 3. So I have concerns about the showing financial stability and sustainability for contingent expenses. Also, the operating budget shows that they've budgeted for security or SRO, school resource officer, at the cost of $27,000. The current cost of a guardian through the district is $27,750 plus benefits per year. So in my opinion, again, the applicant has not sufficiently budgeted for this expense unless they can obtain some type of security firm at a lower cost. However, on the 50% reduced enrollment budget plan, they show that they would reduce that FTE to 0.5. And under state statute, all public schools must have an armed safety officer on site when students are present. So if they're continuing to operate 5 days a week as a standard school, even under the 50% enrollment, they would have to modify that to 1.0 FTE to safely secure the school as required under statute. Also on technology, the budget on page 271 includes $27,000 for computers for students and teachers. With a projection of 15 classrooms the first year, that would equal $1,800 per classroom for technology for teachers, students, and classroom. The projectors as well cost $550, and in addition to charging and storing devices. Many decisions regarding technology and other areas are dependent on the leader of the school. So since the principal has not been chosen at this time, it's difficult to identify all of the areas of concern in the area of technology. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have Ms. Kestry for technology here, if she'd like to come up, if there's anything else we need to add under technology.
I believe that's all covered.
Okay. All right, just checking. Next is section 22 for the startup plan.
Again, Sarah Lee Morrissey, Director of Planning and Construction. As has been mentioned twice already, the basis for the recommendation of does not meet the standard on startup plan is the use of the contents of the facility as collateral for the startup loan. And it was recognized during the capacity interview, and it is also included in the lease document. Several provisions in the lease prohibit the use of the landlord's interest for collateral.
Thank you.
At this time, the district portion of their presentation is completed, and we will have the applicant come forward for their rebuttal time.
Thank you. Ms. Amy, Ms. Fisher, thank you.
I'm right in front of the camera again.
Don't worry, it's on everybody. Not to worry about that.
Are we all set?
Are there any others going to join you, or just a...
Yes, we'll rotate out.
Okay, great. Yeah, just I ask you before you, as you begin your comments, to identify yourself and your title, how you're connected to this application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
Whenever you're ready.
So first, just good afternoon.
And pull that microphone real
full.
close to you.
I'm a soft talker. Good afternoon, Chairman Persis, board members, and Superintendent Russell. I'd like to start out today by saying how much we appreciate this opportunity to speak with you and to clarify some of your concerns and questions. The team representing Florida East Coast Charter School that's here today includes board members John Gagne and Brian Sieber, financial consultants from School Financial Services. We have Amanda Eldridge and Desiree Kennemer. And then educational and charter school consultants from the Collaborative Educational Network, which is Lindsay Granger, and myself, Kim Cavanaugh. We're the people that help the board articulate their vision and put together the application. After receiving the initial evaluation rubric and then followed up by the PowerPoint presentation, we've carefully reviewed the contents of the rubric, the concerns, and the issues that you identified, and we compared those comments and concerns with the content of the application itself. Based on that review, we are very confident that the charter application fully complies with all statutory requirements and meets the criterion for approval. As we go through the concerns in the order in which they presented in the presentation, I think you're going to see that there is no reasonable reason for denial within the 4 sections that were marked as partially met or within the 2 sections that were rated as does not meet. So we're going to start with the curriculum, section 4. All right, that's the positive. All right, and I'm going to jump to the middle one. So the first concern that was noted was not hiring a PE teacher, and that PE standards and curriculum must be overseen by a certified physical educator in accordance with
section 1003.455. So the one thing we did want to clarify is that in fact the requirement is not that it be overseen by a certified PE instructor, but that the curriculum be reviewed by a physical educator, which is very different. Oversight to me means in person overseeing the instruction and the provision as opposed to the review of the curriculum in general. On page 18 of our application, in more of a general area, just talking about how the school's instructional program and curriculum will be developed, we state, to focus attention on the critical ideas and information essential to each content area and course, curriculum maps will be utilized by the school's administration and teachers. We will utilize available Volusia County Schools curriculum maps to the extent practical as a foundation and resource to ensure standards are addressed in a logical, coherent, and sufficiently comprehensive manner. Using the district maps as a guide, school administration and teachers will develop maps and curriculum crosswalks in alignment with materials used by the school. So it didn't come up in the capacity interview and was not explicitly stated in each curriculum area. Volusia County Schools does have curriculum maps for each grade level for physical education, K through 5. We would be using those curriculum maps, which we assume have been reviewed and approved by physical education staff in the district. The district also provides a wealth of resources, and they're also available through all other kinds of sources for actual strategies and activities, instructional activities in the areas of physical education, which we would also be using. So we feel that and the statute also clearly allows for non-PE certified individuals to provide instruction in physical education. As a very small school at startup and a pretty small school once it reaches full capacity, it's very logical and reasonable to have classroom teachers guided by the existing curriculum maps and the resources for instructional planning activities that are available for that instruction to be provided and for it to meet the standards. What we didn't mention was, again, as the school increases its enrollment and reaches maximum capacity, if it is possible within the budget to have a dedicated individual, we would do that. But at the startup point with so few students, that's simply not financially reasonable. So the plan that we offer is one that is commonly used by charter schools across the state and does meet the statutory requirements. The next area we're going to talk about is the first one, that falls under other for curriculum plan. And the reviewers stated that they were unable to identify the curriculum used and that it wouldn't be decided till the principal would be hired. Now, I think it was clarified today that, because curriculum is a very broad concept, it's far beyond instructional materials. So we were a little bit confused about that, but based on our close reading and then what was said just a few moments ago, it appears that the focus is really on just those instructional materials themselves as the area of concern. Again, as is common with independent charter schools, by which I mean not a charter school that's a replication of an existing program where everything is already all planned out, or a charter school operated by a management company where also oftentimes all of those decisions about instructional materials and everything are already established. As an independent charter school, those are the things that the school, the instructional leader and the school itself will develop. So again, in a traditional district school, a new principal comes into an existing program, and usually within a year or two, they might be saying, yeah, this math program's going, and we're gonna get some different materials. They make those changes, and they can do it gradually. Well, this is walking into a brand new school. And we work with charter schools all over the state that are in this startup phase, and we feel strongly that it would be inappropriate to ask the board members to put forth the specific instructional materials to limit the school's educational program to that extent when the school will be, within the next several months to a year, will be hiring the instructional leader of the school whose vision will be to guide this school and make those kinds of decisions. And someone, the person selected, will be someone who's committed to project-based learning and to interdisciplinary studies and to the things that are at the core of this program. So it would be inappropriate to tie them now through an application that becomes part of the contract to using those particular materials. There's also the time factor that by the time between when an application is written and a school opens, lots of things can change and new materials become available. You hired staff. The staff are more comfortable or have had more or less success with different materials. So it only makes sense to put off those actual decisions until, at a minimum, the administrative leader is in place. So we feel that again, it's perfectly acceptable and allowable under the application itself. It does not say only if your curriculum is fully developed do you have to identify each of those materials. So we fully meet that part of the requirement. That's also related to the third aspect of curriculum that was a concern.
Right. So again, my name is Lindsay Granger, and I will be focusing on the last piece in this section regarding the instructional materials selected. The district commented that they are not the most current editions, and we did engage in discussion with the district regarding this concept during the capacity interview. One of the really critical things is to comment on the school's commitment to using the most up-to-date resources and instructional materials and those materials that follow the state adoption cycles that Florida DOE makes available. That was cited throughout the application in multiple sections. The specific materials were, again, proposed materials, as Kim just stated, not finalized. And one very specific reading material was cited. Not all of the materials included within the reading plan or the curriculum section, and that was the Reading Wonders series. And at the time of the writing of this application, the reference that was used from the state's adoption list is captured within their contract extensions, and that actual reading series was still considered current, if you will, at that time. It was on the 2018 contract extension list. That list is still publicly available for instructional materials on the Florida Department of Education's website. It specifically states McGraw-Hill School Edition, LLC, Reading Wonders K-5, and that's the material that was proposed within the application as a series being considered. The other series or instructional material that was stated as being outdated was in the area of science, the science fusion materials. Again, that proposed series was based off of the contract extension list that's publicly available on DOE's website. We did talk about that very specifically in the interview, that the most recent science adopted list is dated December 21st, 2018 is the exact date, which was probably falling around the winter holidays to some degree. And based on the application timeline of February 1st, that piece was not updated to conform to that specific list. There is, however, related series captured on that list that the school and principal can consider moving forward. The next adoption cycle proposed for the area of reading is during the 2020-21 school year. So again, when considering instructional materials and selection, the school principal and appropriate designees would be referring to that new list if DOE follows their anticipated timeline. And sometimes those timelines and contracts are extended as they work through that process. The next area that we are going to focus on, I have to click through the PowerPoint, is facilities. And Mr. Sieber is going to be following up on that issue.
My name is Brian Sieber. I'm a member of the board. Should I introduce myself? I got on the board first. I was asked to be on this board after the earlier application was denied, because one of the reasons for the denial included that there was not enough professional expertise on the board. And so I'm a practicing attorney. I bring a lot of business and professional background as a strength to the board, I hope. I'm also a certified addictions professional, and in that connection I work with a lot of young people. And what I have noticed in working with them is that they tend not to be real connected to school, and that substance abuse tends to fill in something that they see as a void in their lives. And I also notice that I'm on the chair of the Board of Disability Solutions for Independent Living, which interacts with the district quite a lot in doing IEPs and so forth for young people who are in school, but because of their disabilities find it difficult to connect well with school. So that happens even with good teachers and supportive administration. That lack of connectivity is sometimes a problem. And my interest in being on this board is because it seemed to me to be a way of addressing a particular, a discrete section of our youth who might be interested in the curriculum that would draw them and find better ways for them to be connected. In fact, come to think of it, my view about this is supported by the fact that my wife, Lynn Sieber, is a high school teacher, and one of the things that I hear her talk about in terms of her students are for those who struggle in maintaining their commitment to doing well in school, that lack of connectivity is something that she finds in common about that. So it seems to me that in looking at the approach that Florida East Coast has taken, that they want to connect students and their families and teachers together to accomplish that excellence that sometimes, even as I said, supportive schools and teachers and curriculum does not always get them. It seems to me that this charter school presents a unique environment to accomplish and support that collaboration. I really believe in the vision of this of Florida East Coast. It focuses on the whole child approach. It promotes academic, physical, and social development. It has an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, math. That's not something that I'm particularly strong on, but it's an area that nowadays a lot of young people aren't connected to, and it might be an invitation to them to find a more profound connection than they otherwise might have experienced. And this starts at a very young age, too, so they're introduced to the STEM approach at a very young age, which I think is going to be key in providing a school environment that's going to be of interest to them. So that's how I came onto the board. The particular question I was just asked to talk about has to do with the facilities and the lease. The lease language does say, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this lease, tenants shall never, under any circumstances, have the power to subject landlord's interest in the premises or the building to any liens of any kind. That language, I think, has been misunderstood. That language talks about the building and the land. And it really talks about, for example, if you don't pay your water bill, a lien's going to arise against the land, and that's going to affect negatively the landlord's interest in the land and the building. That's different from a consensual lien that the board might approve the school entering into, where there might be a lien on furniture within the building. This board could not give a lien against things it doesn't own. And so the idea that the provision in the lease that says we can't negatively impact the landlord's interest in the premises or the building really is not inconsistent at all with what's projected to be a loan that will be secured by the school's interest in equipment, furniture, other things that are not property of the landlord, nor are they attached to the building in such a way that they would become property of the landlord under the law. So I think this language has just been misconstrued and applied to something that it really does not relate to.
Okay. So now we are moving in numerical order to the next section, which is food service. earlier district staff commented on the issue related to the review and approval of student applications that's related to the National School Lunch Program and free and reduced lunch. We did discuss during the capacity interview that after completing an RFP process and contracting with an outside vendor, the school will, through that contractual relationship, participate in the National School Lunch Program. Through that relationship, the school will have a designee who is appropriately trained to review and approve student applications for free and reduced lunch. The application itself was written, and I think it spoke to both. There would need to be more clarity on the issue, and that's why we engaged in the discussion, I believe, at the capacity interview. Some schools in the state of Florida, charter schools, do contract or do work with the district in that capacity, where the district currently does with its existing charter schools. Therefore, what I just said about the RFP process and completing that, the vendor that is selected would be required to have the credentials to act as that designee in this case. So now, the rest of the sections, for the most part, are related to finances and budget. So the reimbursable meal rate issue, under the food service section, we're going to have our team members, Amanda and Desiree with School Financial Services, join us at the table. We're talking about the fact that we need to claim the seats. Who's going to be where?
Thank you. If you would introduce yourselves and your titles and your connection again to this application.
I am Amanda Eldridge, Director of Operations for School Financial Services, and we assisted the board in sections 20 and 21 of their application.
Yes, and I am Desiree Kinnemer with School Financial Services, Budget Analyst.
Thank you.
In regards to the second point under Section 18 and food service, states that reimbursable meal rates were consolidated and not categorized by paid, reduced, and free. As stated in the application on attachment X2, page 274, states reimbursable meal rates are categorized at 30% full price, 21% reduced, and 49% free, based on the 2017-18 FLDOE Lunch Status Survey 3 for Volusia County. It also states that the reimbursement at full price is 39 cents, reduced rate is $3, and the free reimbursement rate is $3.40. So it is indeed in the application. Moving on to Section 21, which also partially met, one of the concerns stated was the applicant states the board will receive cash and budget performance projections monthly during the first year beginning in September. Our response to that is per page 104 of the application, the monthly financial statements will be in compliance with Rule 6A-10081, which will include the balance sheet, revenue and expense report, year-to-date comparison of budgeted versus actual revenues and expenditures. The reference to the standard financial statements reflects our commitment to comply with statute and rule with regard to providing the necessary information to facilitate the board review and oversight. Additionally, the cash and budget performance projections are in addition to the above stated items. The projections referred to are projections of every line item by fund, function, and object, which disclose year-to-date amounts as well as projected amounts through the fiscal year end based on the unique behavior pattern of each individual line item. The tool identifies areas of concern in both budget and cash flow, so they can be planned for and avoided rather than being overcome upon occurrence. In regards to projections beginning in September, this method has proven effective due to the school having stable enrollment and complete staffing, and initial instructional expenses have been purchased. Thus, you have an accurate projection. Also, they had a concern in regards to the insurance policy only partially meeting board policy. As stated in the capacity interview, per page 106, Florida East Coast Charter would provide evidence of insurance consistent with the sponsor's requirement, which is the district. I'm going to go ahead and move on to section 20, which they stated did not meet. One of their concerns was that the applicant provided documentation of the Ability Startup Loan of $40,000. The amount of this loan appears that it may be insufficient for startups since there is an ending balance at the end of the startup period of $136. Our response to that is, on the startup budget provided on attachment Y1 in the application, page 296, it does meet the standard with the surplus of $136. The startup revenue is budgeted by rounding total expenses up to the nearest round number. This approach minimizes the debt service expense for which future years must provide payment. Because of the nature of startup activities, the number of unique budget line items is limited, which reduces the likelihood of experiencing a budget deficit as compared to an operating budget. Further, any increase in the startup budget would likely trigger a corresponding reduction in the operating budget which follows. Therefore, the challenge is not so much a budget issue as it is a timing issue. Advertising, which is just over 50% of the expenses, is typical of this relationship. While the expense is necessary, there is flexibility in the timing of that. Another concern was, as stated above, the fund balance at the end of the startup period is $136, and the startup budget does not contain any line item for contingency. The fund balance at the end of year one is less than 1% and is insufficient to allow for any contingencies that may arise. Additionally, under both the 75% and 50% enrollment plans, the fund balance at the end of years 1 and 2 are less than 1% and less than 2% in year 3. The application does not show financial stability and sustainability should contingency expenses arise. Once again, startup budget on attachment Y1, page 296, meets the standard of a surplus of $136. On attachment X1, page 273 of the application, attachment X4, page 287, and attachment X5, page 292, on each of these, a 3% net FEFP contingency is indeed included as a line item within each of these budgets. After adding ending balance, fund balance, 3% contingency on years of concern, results are as follows. At 100% enrollment in year 1, the percentage of total revenues is 3.3%. At 75% enrollment in year 1, the percentage of total revenues is 2.8. 75% enrollment in year 2 is 6.5. 75% enrollment at year 3 is 11%. At 50% enrollment in year 1, the percent of total revenues is 2.7%. 50% enrollment in year 2 is at 6.1%, and at 50% enrollment in year 3, it's at 9.9. The third concern in the operating budget shows security SRO at a cost of $27,000. The current cost of a guardian is $27,750 plus benefits per year. The applicant has not sufficiently budgeted for this expense unless they can obtain a guard through a security firm at a lower cost. On the 50% reduced enrollment budget plan, the applicant shows cutting the security SRO budget of 0.5. Our response is, the operating budget meets state statute by budgeting a security SRO position on page 273, attachment X1. The additional cost to meet the salary of $27,750 for the security position is $830. It would not create a deficit in the operating budget. As stated in the capacity interview, The 50% enrollment plan would include 1 FTE for a security position meeting state statute requirement. This would be funded by reducing expenses not impacting the outlined educational plan or utilizing a portion of noted contingency. The cash and budget performance projections are in addition to the above stated items. Concerns and additional questions. I believe that actually wraps up our section 20. Yes. Pardon me, I am so sorry about that. And another concern is the technology. The budget on page 271 includes $27,000 for computers for students and teachers, with a projection of 15 K through 2 classrooms the first year. That equals $1,800 per classroom for technology. Our response to that is the school's plan per budget narrative on page 274 is to lease, not purchase, technology equipment at a cost of $1,800 per classroom per year, beginning at $27,000 for 15 classrooms in year 1. That concludes section 20.
The last section is section 22, startup plan. This was the other section that is marked does not meet. Let me get myself to the right place. This one was confusing to us, and then I think after hearing Mr. Renna speak this morning, it was the same circumstance. The rubric states that the timeline is reasonable and having an existing facility addresses many potential issues. The purpose for this section and the criterion for evaluation are that it provides a thoughtful and realistic implementation plan that covers major operational items and provides flexibility for addressing unanticipated events, but it is to provide a clear roadmap of the steps and strategies that will be employed. So what was confusing to us was that a finding of a concern that of the budget and whether the budget was sufficient was used to evaluate a completely different section that has completely different criterion. And particularly since the strength is that the timeline is reasonable and that the strategies are reasonable. So we feel that, and we've addressed the inconsistency in the district's financial concerns. So we feel that the startup plan does meet the requirements.
Ms. Kavanaugh, you've kind of hit the 30-minute mark on this presentation. Are you near the end of your comments?
Yes, we're
I'll give
right
you
there.
a couple of more minutes.
And Mr. Sieber has just our
I'll give
closing
you 2 more minutes.
Perfect.
Total.
I just would like to say that I believe that as we've demonstrated today, item by item through the in our response to the committee's concerns, that we have to respectfully disagree with the team's ratings for both the partially met and the does not meet, because either of areas that were missed in the content or misunderstandings. But we firmly believe that every item actually does meet the requirements.
I got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Russell. We really appreciate all of the hard work that the district has put into reviewing this application. We've listened to what they had to say. I think we've responded to their concerns. We have collaborated with those who were talked with you before as a board, and we're convinced that we have complied with the requirements of the statute and that our application should be approved today, notwithstanding the recommendation. I'm asking for each one of you, having heard of what we said, to vote in favor of this application. I do not see the concerns that were raised as being competent, substantial evidence to deny this application. And on the contrary, I think that the statements that we've made today, the further information that we've given has given competent, substantial evidence as to why this application should be approved. To the degree that in the contract phase, which is I think where we should then now be moving to, that if there's anything that comes up that can be addressed in that context, that as a question of statute, we've complied with what needs to be shown now to get us past this point, so that we can move forward to the contract stage. I think we are ready to move forward. I think the concerns have been addressed, and I hope that we have shown enough that we don't have to go forward on any appeal process, but can have this approved now.
Thank you, Mr. Sieber.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 2:10. 2:10. Can everyone find a seat, and we'll go ahead and reconvene. At this time, it's the district's staff opportunity to respond to the applicant's response to your comments on the application.
Response to the response. And
we can keep responding to each other until we're all satisfied, I guess. But so you guys, I shouldn't say that. You are now ready, and I know we said 10 minutes. I'm not going to be real, hard fast on that time, but let's try to keep it between 10 and 12 if we can, please. So, Amy, are you going to start it? Okay, yes. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Persis. The district has some additional information that we'd like to bring forward in response to the rebuttal. I turn it over to Ms. Rachel Hazel.
Okay, Ms. Hazel.
Good afternoon again. I am bringing up with me Becky Lucas, who is our K-5 elementary science specialist, and she was going to address the concerns with the science curriculum.
Ms. Lucas.
Good afternoon, Chairman Persis, School Board, Superintendent Russell. My name is Becky Lucas, and I'm the elementary science specialist. The last mention of the K-5 HMH Science Fusion was on the extension list for the 2011 and 2016 contract period. Science went through an instructional materials adoption during the 2017-2018 school year. The adopted materials list released by Florida's Department of Education was amended in December 2018 and did not include the K-5 HMH Science Fusion series as an adopted instructional material. The K-5 HMH series titled Science Fusion was also not included on the preliminary list released in August of 2018.
Thank you.
All right. Also, additionally, thank you, Ms. Lucas. Also, Robert Milholland is going to come up and address the concerns regarding PE and general curriculum map concerns.
Good afternoon, Chairman Persis, Superintendent Russell, and board members. I am representing Grace Kellermeyer, who is at a state meeting for PE supervisors. While statute 1003.455 does indicate that all physical education programs and curriculum must be reviewed by a certified physical education instructor, a certified teacher that is K-5 that is teaching PE, while they might not be certified specifically in physical education, their curriculum must be reviewed by a certified physical education instructor. And when you're talking about K through 5 elementary students, if a non-certified PE instructor is instructing physical education, then you're talking about physical activity and the safety of students. So that curriculum must be reviewed by a certified instructor. The curriculum maps that are used by Volusia County teachers are basic frameworks. They are not curriculum. That curriculum is developed by the teacher, by the school, or some outside organization. They are a listing of the standards set forth by the Florida Department of Education. Our curriculum maps are organizational structures and provide other information for teachers to develop their instruction, but they are not a set curriculum.
Thank you. Ms. Hazel, any other people you're bringing up? Okay.
No, sir, that's all we have.
Ms. Kelly?
Next up is Deb Muller. She's
Ms.
also
Muller.
coming back up, along with Nathan Pollock, our
Okay.
district counsel.
Okay.
Deb Muller, Chief Financial Officer. So the concern was raised during the capacity interview with the applicant as to where the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that it was using for collateral to get a loan of $40,000 for the startup expenditures. During that interview, that was the question that I asked. What were you speaking about in terms of where this furniture, fixture, and equipment was coming from? And the applicant stated at that time that there were furniture, fixtures, possibly projectors, and such in the building that they were planning to lease. So the way that I interpreted that, based on their answer, was they were pledging that equipment. However, nowhere in their application is there anything to support what that furniture, fixture, and equipment may be or the value of it. So there, regardless of the lease, the statement about the lease and exclusion of the liens not referring to furniture, fixture, and equipment, there's nothing that supports that there's anything in that building and or that they have the right to use that as their collateral.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to build off that, just for the board's benefit, the transcript of the capacity interview is attachment D, which was entered as Exhibit 4, and the specific question by Ms. Mueller was on page 71 to 72. And so that's where the district kind of went down that line to try to find where in the application materials there was this support for the collateral. And as Mr. Siebert brought up, is he referenced the lease, and that lease is on page 249, starting on page 249 of attachment A, which is Exhibit 1, and we didn't hear anything where he talked about they did have that right. There was talk about there's a misinterpretation about the lien language, which was on page, starting on page 251, which is 3 of 9 of that lease, but we didn't hear where he talked about they specifically had this right to use this collateral or what that looked like or anything along those lines. What the lease also does talk about on page 8 of 9 of it is this lease can't be amended without written consent by both parties, and so there's nothing that says that they have this right. And so the district's concern, whether there was a misinterpretation of the liens language or not, is the same, because we've never been able to find where they have this authority or what they would be using as the collateral, and that was the concern that we raised up. We just kind of went down the language here based on the answer at the capacity interview.
Thank you. Any other presenters?
That concludes our response at this time.
All right, thank you. And now, would the applicant like to come forward at this time? And you don't have to. I'm just inviting you if you'd like to come forward and respond to what you've just heard.
Because our notes are illegible, we won't be going in the exact same order. Regarding the physical education, we can acknowledging, understanding the difference, as I had said before, curriculum is far more than instructional materials. Curriculum is also far more than just the curriculum map itself. When we talked about using other resources that were available through general resources available to all teachers and specific Volusia County resources, included guidance, the programs, activities, instructional lessons, etc. Those are all resources that we would use. When Mr. Siebert talked about some of the little less significant things that can be addressed through the contract process, one of those is the understanding that, when I was reading the citation from the application itself about the process for developing that curriculum, that it would be done by the teachers and the staff, and making sure that the map works and that what is being taught in the right ways, and that those plans are made. All of that, if it would be appropriate, and it seems that it would be, we would have that reviewed by a credentialed physical education teacher, whether that's something that the district wanted to participate in and have a designated person from your department do that review, we would be fine with that. Absent that, we would reach out to other instructional professionals in the area and get that independent review of the curriculum that would be built, established prior to implementation. But that would be something that would easily be addressed through the contract process.
Thank you.
Do the instructional science.
Mm-hmm. The actual discussion related to the science materials, I think we are saying some of the same things in very different ways, but the clarification that was provided today was about looking at the contract extension list. We are in agreement that the December 21st, 2018 list is what you would be basing decisions off of if you were to review materials and select right now. The commitment is to continue to follow any adoption cycles and look at science materials in that way. That the adoption cycles from DOE would be the guiding list that we would refer to. I think the other point of clarification that we did not talk about today is the impetus of the actual educational program and science, in that we are right now, we have a laser light focus on one instructional material. To implement this program with fidelity, there's going to need to be multiple sources, multiple resources, different texts, ideas for planning and resources to integrate across content areas. We're not in disagreement that the actual list, as I stated previously, was updated in December of 2018. I think the clarification is that I was referring to a contract extension list. The district was referring to the preliminary list and the currently adopted list.
And I think the biggest takeaway was that in the period between December 21st and February 1st, given that all of that content of the application had been developed months earlier, we did not go back and catch that single text had been taken off of the list in that little window of time. But again, the message throughout the application, it describes the process by which those instructional materials will be selected. And I don't think there's anything in there other than that one example that would lead anyone to believe that we would be using outdated materials.
The other point of clarification is earlier I indicated that there was a series from that publisher on that extension list, on the currently adopted list from December of 2018. I was not implying that same science fusion material was available on the current list.
Also, regarding the FF&E and the lien, I believe I was the individual in the capacity interview who, when the FF&E question came up, I said, yes, what's in the school? And so first of all, I'm not a contracts person, and even the facilities is not my area. What I did have in my head was knowing that part of what was coming with the building was certain amount of FF&E. That said, that's the whole idea that you can't have a lien against someone else's property. The school will be purchasing things on its own. The letter of commitment from the bank covers a period of multiple years. Over that time, the school will be purchasing FF&E on its own, through its own, and will have donations, and through its own FTE, FEFP will be purchasing materials. Those kinds of things would fall under that letter. And again, when I answered, I was just thinking, were you asking, will there be any FF&E? I don't even know exactly what I was thinking you were asking, but the answer was not as targeted toward your intent as perhaps it should have been.
And Brian Sieber, if I may supplement what was just said, the objection that was raised and that I was responding to had to do with the language in the lease, and as I said, that's got to do with the building and the land. What was just said is in no way inconsistent with the argument that I made that the language that was quoted and relied on in the objection is not applicable to what we're talking about. So both can be true. What counsel was referring to, I don't have any disagreement that we can't give a lien on the building or the land, but what was just stated also indicates that that's not what we're ever intending to do. The lien would be on equipment, furniture that was purchased other than that which is already there in the building, other than what's attached to the building so that it becomes fixtures. So both are so, it's just they're a different topic. I didn't respond to anything other than what was in the point made, number 20, I guess it is, or 12, because all that was mentioned was the language of the lease that applies only to land and building.
Is there anything else? Problems of the application as a whole related to curriculum, like that. If you have anything,
Since there's time, just thinking about this process as a whole and the application itself, because there is such a specific way in which you have to respond to the application prompts, and a lot of the clarification discussed and provided during the capacity interview and today goes back to what's required to complete the application process. And so using curriculum as an example, I think we indicated earlier that selecting instructional materials and curriculum are not synonymous. And to apply them in that way, we are doing a disservice to the intent of that application, which is for us to propose a comprehensive curriculum, and it gave us the option to either look at if the school had a fully developed curriculum, speak to that, and it gives the requirements for doing so. If it's not fully established, you have that route to take, and we chose the latter based upon the fact that this is an independent charter school. And we feel that we've determined that we have sufficiently answered the prompts in a comprehensive manner based off of what's required under Florida statute.
So in summary, I just want to thank everybody again and state that we think that competent, substantial evidence is there to support this application, and I very much hope that the board will be able to do so today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board members, we have the opportunity now to ask questions, and if you would like, I can bring our staff back up first and see if you have any questions. So we can go back and forth, so it's not like this is your only opportunity. So we'll just play nice here, everyone, and we will get through the process. Does anybody have any question they would like to ask our staff at this time? Go ahead, Ms. Cuthbert.
I would like to ask the same question I asked before. Where is the school located, and did the district visit the facility?
I believe the proposed location is on Nova Road in Ormond. Is that correct?
It's Nova Road, just south of Granada.
Okay. Did the district visit the facility?
I'm going to have to defer to our facilities folks. I know they've been there in the past. I don't know how recently they've been there.
I see them nodding their heads. They've been to the facility. Okay.
Okay. I noticed in the application they want to have an indoor gym. Does this facility have one?
I think maybe I need to let the applicant answer that question. Would that be more appropriate?
I didn't know if you saw one, if the district saw one. You know, their view and maybe the applicant's view might be different.
Okay.
In where the children will be having recreation.
It's a very large. It's a
we're going to have to, we can't respond from the audience, so you're going to have to come up and say who you are. And Ms. Cuthbert, if I can get you to pull that mic in a little bit closer to you too. You're just barely being heard out there from what I'm
Yes, it does have, it's a very large facility. It's been used as a school in the past. It has a very large gymnasium that's got, I mean, it's amazing.
Okay, high ceilings, basketball.
Yes, yeah, like official.
And has all the equipment? Is it staff
I'm not
with
sure
equipment?
exactly what's there, but
okay. Okay, is that equipment owned by the person who's going to lease it to you?
as far as I know, there may be some equipment there that is is there because I believe that right now there's some gymnastics program that's separate that you know that they're renting the space. So I don't know what they've put there.
Okay. But
the space itself, the facility, and it has been used as a gymnasium.
Okay.
For students.
Thank you. I have.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have other questions of Ms. Morrissey.
Ms. Morrissey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Kavanaugh.
Musical chairs.
It's been a while since I've been there.
Okay.
But I was there.
Okay. Is there capacity? I mean, it's 90 students per for kindergarten, 90 for first grade, 90 for second grade. What kind of impact, if they have a 100% enrollment, what do you think could be the impact of the surrounding schools, traditional schools?
I think they will draw from Holly Hill, Ormond Elementary, and Tomoka Elementary. I think those will be the three schools primarily affected.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Would it create a problem with those schools? I mean, Tomoka is a little...
So
what is their
Tomoka, we have a lot of portables on the Tomoka campus, and we would like to, Tomoka is on the half-cent project list. Mm-hmm. So the school is, Tomoka is not as heavily enrolled as it has been in previous years. However, it is a school that we consider to be over its permanent capacity. If it were under-enrolled, which is what would happen, I think, if this school's open, it could give us some flexibility to address construction issues that we see coming our way. At Holly Hill, Ormond Elementary is primarily a school of choice. You know, those are the other two schools that I see being impacted by this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your expertise. Can you clarify? Becky Lucas came up to talk about the science curriculum. Could you clarify what she was saying? I mean, I know the text but still there's a science text out there, correct, that could be used? Is there one that's being utilized? I don't quite understand the problem with the science text.
She's coming.
Okay.
Hi. The problem with the listed science text is that it's no longer in the adoption. Okay. Therefore, it's not the most current. And that was the main point we were making in the document. HMH does have a current listing on the adopted list. The science fusion text is not on the adopted list.
Okay, so you're saying that they need to choose a different science text?
Yes.
Okay, and then you're talking about Houghton Mifflin Hall? That's the HMH?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure a lot of people may not know that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Ms. Lucas, could you please come back? And maybe we can do that. I'll just go around and ask if anybody else has a question for Ms. Lucas, so you won't have to go back and forth.
In your science, correct?
Yes, I am.
So why are you saying that they need to select another book?
The adopted list from the Florida Department of Education does not list the book that they have listed in their application as a current material.
So are you saying that charter schools have to go along with the district's curriculum or the state's curriculum, or are they able to veer and do something different?
I am just listing just stating that those are the adopted materials that the state of Florida suggests.
I understand that, but will a charter school have to use that list?
That's a good question, and I honestly Miss Rachel Hazel can answer that question.
Okay, Miss Rachel Hazel.
Hello.
Hello.
Rachel Hazel, Interim Chief Academic Officer. No, the charter schools do have the freedom of curriculum, but what Ms. Lucas was clarifying was that was not the most up-to-date materials, that there are materials that are more up-to-date with that.
Okay, so in other words, had they used something more recent, regardless if it was on that list or not, would that have been sufficient? Say they decided to go Time for Learning, or say they had wanted to go with ABECA, and they used current textbooks, because all of those are programs that are aligned to
as long as they're in alignment with our standard. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Ms. Lucas about the science materials? No? Okay.
Let me add, too, that the reviewers were tasked with looking at what was in the application, and that's what she was responding for in her area that she was looking at that included science materials.
No, and I understand this because it's about my 6th year going through this. My question was, even with that, did they select material? And it was yes or no, and they did. We are just saying that based on the year, that it may not be the most relevant and current material, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, Mr. Colon.
So I have a question for the consultants. If you can come up.
You all want me to sit?
So currently, how long are you all contracted to work with this governing board as a consultant group?
At this point, we're working with them through the application approval process. And we've had conversations about having an ongoing relationship to help support them. We provide varying, depends on the school, we provide varying degrees of support ongoing, but this is phase 1 because you don't have a contract for services if there's not an approved school.
Okay. Is there a member of the board here, or I guess who would be the chief of the board? Do we have a chief of the board?
I'm Brian Seaver. I'm on the board. The president is not here because of the timing today.
Okay.
But I'm able to speak for the board.
Do we know what the intent of the board is? And so my reasoning for asking is this, is I'm looking at the governing board and their backgrounds, and I'm not going to get into how I feel about it yet. Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. But I see the strength in the consultant group versus in the governing board. And so I want to make sure, we're tasked with looking at this application with what's been submitted. And I think the timing with the textbook, I mean, we don't even know what ELA textbook we're using next year. And so the timing of the textbook and all of that, that's all. I just want to make sure that there is a sound business plan, should this be approved, to operate with folks who know what they are doing. And that's important to me.
I think, this is Brian Sieber, I'm a board member. Speaking as a board member of this and other boards, I think the strongest board is one which includes people who are well connected to the community and who bring varying levels of experience and expertise in those kinds of issues that might come before a board. That's not the same thing as saying that, for example, I'm on the Board of Disability Solutions. I don't need to be a disabled person other than just now in order to do a good job on that. What I need to be able to do is to find those people who would do a good job. So in the same way that the board looked for a competent and experienced group to provide this service at this stage of the game, that would also be exactly what I would anticipate doing in an ongoing basis. Because I'm not an educator and I'm not going to become an educator, I need to rely on those who are educators. So yes, fair. I expect to continue with this group or a similar group.
Great, thank you. There was something pointed out about giving monthly financial reports to the board. Should your application be approved today, would your organization be willing to provide those monthly statements to the board for oversight?
Absolutely. At the moment that the charter is approved and a contract is agreed upon between the sponsor and the school, they would in turn submit a request for proposal to an organization like myself, and we would in turn complete that RFP, and if we are allotted in their budget and they can in turn afford to outsource that, absolutely we would provide those monthly financial statements to that board and work with them on a very close basis to ensure the cash flow projections and everything is as accurate as possible. Just as he stated, he would in turn look towards an educational piece to fill that gap for the board. In turn, we would provide that role on the financial aspect.
Great.
Identify yourself.
I am Amanda Eldridge, School Financial Services.
Thank you.
I want to ask about the PE. And so, I'm sorry, I'm sort of going as I wrote things down.
That's all right. And so, Ms. Kavanaugh, you're going to be responding?
Yes. Okay. So, is in Florida charter schools, is there a model for PE instruction that does not include a certified PE teacher? Is that something that charter schools typically do on startup?
It's not uncommon at all for charter schools, particularly those that don't have access to facilities like this particular school will have, to rely more on the health hope course and not so much on physical education as we traditionally think of it. I'll say for most startup charter schools, any of the special areas is one of the areas of challenge. So it's pretty common. The model that we're describing is the typical model.
Okay. And then on the food, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. This is Lindsay Granger again. The educational program itself, because it focuses on the whole child, a part of that is wellness. Overall wellness, physical, social, emotional, behavioral wellness. And so with that, teachers are going to be receiving support to implement a program geared around that health and wellness mindset. And so it should be embedded as part of the culture, but also additional minutes for movement are included in the proposed schedule. So there should be a clear understanding of how to implement activities in the classroom with students K-5 for movement, and then in turn aligning that back to the standards in that area.
Okay. And for food service, is it common in Florida to utilize the school district to validate eligibility while they are going to an outside vendor? Is that common practice?
I don't know if it's common practice, but we do have districts that desire to have that control, because it's sort of two separate things. It depends on what the vendor is providing. If the vendor is if it's just straight food and the school itself is operating, it's handling all of the National Food Service, the school lunch program, then in the case I'm thinking of, the district wanted to verify all of the documentation, and they requested that they be the entity that handle that. The flip side is, and what we would be doing now that we understand that Volusia County does not want that control, because it's also a responsibility, many of the vendors themselves do have that capacity. So that was a clear point of clarification during the capacity interview. That was, okay, so that helps us make our decision. So we won't go this way. Instead, we'll be looking for one of the larger, deeper vendors that provides the whole thing. They provide the employees to help the servers, the school lunch piece, the whole part.
To be specified in our application.
Yeah, and that'll be specified in the request for proposals when we're looking for someone. And the other situation happens to be in a very rural area. Given the area that we're talking about here, there are ample vendors that would meet the requirements that we're looking for.
All right, very good, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Wright.
Can I ask
yes, you can.
Question? So I want to go back to something Mr. Colon said, but did you get a copy of the transcript?
Please move her microphone.
Did they get a copy of this transcript?
I mean, electronically, we saw it.
You saw it, okay.
We looked at it on board docs.
Okay.
It was posted on board docs.
Okay. So did you get a chance to really read this thoroughly?
We read it, some parts more, some parts less. Is it? Okay. I mean, we were there, so we did.
Right. We reviewed it.
Yeah.
And yes, we read it. We paid closer and deeper attention and reread other parts versus some of the others based off of what we knew we needed to be prepared to respond to today, which we were informed that was the partially meets and does not meet areas.
Okay. So you did read those areas, because I have two questions, and when you address physical education, and I heard you state what other charter schools, but based on what was written, based on what you said, and based on what was asked, what was your understanding
of which piece
of the question about physical education and needed to have a certified PE physical education teacher to review the curriculum?
There's a different interpretation.
Right. At the time of the capacity interview, we were asked whether there would be they didn't use the word designated, I don't think, but whether there would be a PE teacher. Was a PE teacher part of the staff? And the answer is no, especially not in the early years when there's not funding to support an additional staff member, but that the general ed teachers, as is allowable in statute, would be providing that instruction. When we got the rubric, the rubric said statute requires that they be overseen, that the teacher, the gen ed teacher, not gen ed, the non-credentialed, non-PE credentialed teacher had to be overseen by a certified PE teacher, which took us by surprise because we know that there are lots and lots of charter schools that don't have PE teachers. So when we looked at the statute, we saw, no, it is that the curriculum had to be reviewed by it, not, as the rubric stated, that it had to be overseen, because those are two very different things.
In the context in which you're responding in the capacity interview, because there's overlap from section to section at times, initially we also jumped to, does our staffing plan jive with what's being asked? So I think that's where we go first. Then now we understand that it's more about not having an actual certified teacher, and then they've stated based on the district's interpretation of Florida statutes. We did also look at the physical education program website. Kim mentioned earlier all of the resources, and the allowable fact that you can have a non-PE credentialed teacher and other instructional personnel implementing the program at the discretion of the principal. It's listed on the school's website as well. So it actually caused some confusion as we're interpreting what's being asked, how it was rated, and then also what the district makes available and then may implement in practice here as well.
Okay. And then my last question is dealing with the food service. So when looking at food service, was it your understanding, did you ask the district if they could provide the services, or did you budget for a collaboration with the district? Because if I'm not mistaken, you said to him that the district said no.
The budget
Correct.
talks
Right.
about the meals.
And the budget, Amanda or Desiree can speak to the budget and what it includes. Our experience with the district that says, no, we want to do that, it's not a contractual thing. There's no cost associated. They were just saying, these are our kids. This is a federal program. We want those documents to come through our central office and verify them. So it was that kind of an arrangement. So that was not, there would be no budget item for that. The lunch itself, the budget, I'm sure we can talk about.
If I don't answer your question, just clarify it for me. But based on what I have understood, we have indeed included a food service worker and in turn contracted services for the meals. So does that answer your question, or would you like to?
No, that did, but my question is, again, going back to the document, you said about contracting with the district. And so my question was,
Did we say contract?
Did we say contract,
Yeah,
or work with the district?
Maybe in the, she's reviewing it.
She's talking about the applicant, and I didn't bring my thing.
Is it section 18?
Oh, she's in the application, not the transcript. I've got it.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up.
Of the interview? Oh,
I'm going to the written document
okay.
now.
I got it.
I have no internet.
Here's your,
I got it.
Okay, so you referenced just as a vendor. And
Yes.
for some reason, okay,
Yes.
I misread that. Because that was my question. Based on your budget, I didn't see where you budgeted for a contract with the district or...
Right,
Okay.
and so that budget is included, those funds are included in the budget, and what was in question and what we were just throwing out there was if the district, if compared to the other situation, if they wanted to say, we'll verify those applications, the eligibility applications, okay. Understanding that that's not part of it, then that's just part of the cost of the vendor that we would be using for food service that is in the budget.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Asking those questions. We have any other questions at this time? Ms. Haynes at this time? Ms. Cuthbert? Yeah.
I asked questions of the district. Are we finished with the questions of the
We're
district?
going back and forth. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I still have questions of the
Sure. Which
applicant, but please go first, because it's already started.
which district person would you like to come up first, Ms. Cuthbert?
Well, I don't know. Well, I do know there's a financial question coming up. I saw where it's on page 296, where a lot of the expense of the first $40,000 of startup funds will be for a few months for principal and retirement, payroll, health insurance, and workers' compensation costs, a total of a little over $16,000. And then there is contracted services for $1,000. So who are those contracted services? Is that the financial group or is that someone else?
Like general legal.
Probably professionals. Contracted professional services.
So like legal.
That's most likely general, like legal counsel, the kinds of things that get you through that opening phases with finalizing documents and.
Okay. Then you have $20,000 for advertising. What kind of advertising will you be doing?
It depends, which is not a good answer to sufficiently respond, but marketing and advertising, will there be a kind of a timetable in a comprehensive plan, but typically for student recruitment purposes, advertisement of the program, there might be mail outs, local media outlets that you may use for that purpose. We encourage schools and have talked with the governing board about the importance of conducting what we like to call town hall meetings, but informational meetings where parents, community members, stakeholders, students, they come and they hear about the program, they hear from the governing board and the why behind the school and answer questions. There's cost for renting the rooms to run those meetings. If we are not running them at a school site, you may have it at another location. We want to make sure that we're encouraging and supporting the school in reaching any hard to reach areas, which then you may not have it at the actual school facility. We do mass media mail outs, but it does depend on what they decide, and the cost may be adjusted. That's a proposed figure so that there is some room in the budget to conduct those activities.
Okay. I see where there's $1,000 for a computer. Is that for the principal? So
Yes.
He or she can get started? I guess it includes a printer and paper and all of that. Okay. You have 90 students for 3 grades to get started, year 1. Are any of those students already committed? I mean, have you spoken to any schools?
No.
There are parents who have said, we're on board if you get in here. No.
Not to any significant extent. And one of the good things about the new application timeline is that it's now an 18-month period. So you really have a much longer time period, and particularly since we're looking at lower grades, it would be premature to do that at this point. And so,
have you thought of doing any pre-K?
That would be that's separate and distinct from the charter application, and
yes.
I will have to honestly say that as the charter consultants, we encourage founding boards that we work with, unless I'm thinking of one that went from a large established early care program and then they basically extended that program into a school. Other than that, we usually discourage boards from off the bat even thinking about that, because their focus needs to be, for that first year or two, really needs to be on getting the school up and running, because it kind of goes back to what this gentleman's question was earlier. When we do support founding boards as they're opening, the goal is to be a temporary resource. It's a, what is that you always say, the release.
Yeah. Gradual release model.
Where the goal is to get them so they're completely understand and you know, it's like everything's firmed up, all the procedures, everything in the school's up and running. Then if you want to start thinking about having early care or pre-K, then that's an appropriate time. So
to carry this out in an effective and efficient manner, our recommendation is typically no, because
not right away.
It's not an easy feat.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious, since you're the official consultants, what your thoughts were. I'm now going to refer to page 203 of your application. These are your qualifications and leadership duties of the principal or the school leader. I see the principal is expected to develop and implement the school vision and mission. I would think that would be the governing board. Shouldn't that be the governing board, or is that the principal's school?
The day-to-day operational activities are the responsibility of the instructional leader and the principal. That day-to-day roll your sleeves up implementation. The governing board, since they're serving in a different capacity, that statement's intended for the principal, but these are also the proposed qualifications. So
I'm going to interject and say, okay, this is maybe a typographical error, because in the work that we do, so develop and implement are words that
come out of my fingertips a lot in that order. But your point is well taken. First, the vision and the mission are developed. They were developed by the governing board, and it is the principal's job to implement it, to develop the school culture and activities that support it. But I have a feeling that is just fingers that always type, develop, and implement.
Now I get the question. I see what
it's
you're
the develop is the confusing part.
Okay. Is it okay if I go on then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. The principal has to do a great deal, and I see you're hiring the principal, what, 4 months or 2 months ahead of time?
Hopefully 4.
4 months, 4.5 months. Has to evaluate and check out the school's goals, has to hire, has to set up the school, has to create all the curriculum. And you said you wanted a project-based learning center as well as a STEM, and is that principal going to be doing all of that?
The school is not specifically designated as a STEM school, and that was done intentionally because even though there's a strong focus on science and math, I feel like when a school says, I'm a STEM school, then that really does become the overarching, everything that happens at the school is really technology and engineering based. So it's more of a focus and more attention than typical to those areas. Yes, anyone who, being a principal is a challenging job. Being a principal of a startup school is an even more challenging job. And we know that. We have experience in recruitment and support of principals. That's why finding that right individual is so important. And we have found in other schools that we've worked with that when a school has a specialized program and a vision, a mission such as this one, there are a lot of people that are very interested in doing that. There are a lot of people that are ready to take on that kind of a challenge. And it's just finding the right one for the age group and the community. But historically, it's not that, I'm always surprised at how many people are looking for some kind of a new challenge.
That's an awful lot of work.
It is.
One administrator who has to do all the curriculum, do all the support the database decision-making, implement an organized, coherent, and effective multi-tiered system of student supports. And it's also said here, review teacher lesson plans. Is there a guideline when staff is to be hired? Is there going to be pre-planning? When will there,
yes,
and what kind of coordination will the teachers have in creating lesson plans with the principal?
So the part of the school's educational program is the interdisciplinary nature and the project-based nature. That can't be done by teachers in isolation. So a strong part of this application is the school culture itself and the cross-planning and shared responsibilities within the school building. One of the things I don't know how strongly it's articulated, but I know it's mentioned in a few places, is that part of the hiring process is identifying those teachers that have strengths, particular strengths in given areas. And those individuals become they're not teachers on special assignment, but they do become the lead teacher in an area. So they're available to help in whatever their area of strength happens to be.
As part of the interview process for a startup school, if we are assisting a school, once the principal's hired and we're assisting the principal, we help design interview questions that lend themselves to recruiting teachers who are all in and committed to a startup project and understand that there is not necessarily in the beginning a concept of working to the rule or something to that effect. You have to find passionate teachers that will be rewarded by the outcome of opening a startup school. And they're out there, and lots of times you're able to weed them out just in the initial interview process, because you can tell in responses if they're canned responses of someone trying to attain a job and a position, or if they're actually committed and passionate about implementing a program that's new. So it's part of the recruitment process. The questions are designed for that.
Because you would receive a lot of interviews because your starting salary is at $42,000. And there's no supplemental pay, I guess, in there, or additional planning time or training time. There's nothing additional, so it's just a flat.
And there is, yeah, there is a pre-planning and ongoing professional development that targets the project-based learning approach, because that is part of the different way for teachers to be thinking about what they do. When, as you said, there will be a lot of applicants. What we've found most recently, we flipped the way we do things, and we used to interview with kind of a screener interview, and then identify people to bring them in and do either a more intensive phone interview and then face-to-face. And this time we flipped it around, and it was the best idea ever, because it cut that pot down. Like, don't start with the easy questions, start with the hard questions, and then I don't have to, you know, it just makes it a lot easier to find the people that you're really looking for.
Okay, and my last question, of course, pre-planning and recruiting teachers, that pay starts with the FEFP, correct? When you start receiving that income. So that's definitely not part of the startup. Startup is just like, just those 4.5 months to get it rolling, and then a lot of the planning, and so you're going to be very just, well, it's like any new teacher, you're just going to be a day or two ahead of instruction. Okay, is that, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The teachers start whenever FEFP begins.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert. Ms. Haynes, I think it was, were you waiting for Ms. Cuthbert to finish? I wasn't sure. I'm trying to keep the order here. You're good. And Mr. Colon.
I have a question. How many members of your governing board are present today? Two. Okay.
We had others on the way here, and
but we only had a window of time, and when we
initially we thought we thought we were to be here around 11 or so, but that there was an untimed format. And so we told the board members when to be here, and they started driving over and back and forth. So we've been in this text battle to try to get people here, but the schedule just didn't, they had planned for a different schedule. They really wanted to be here.
So when we're talking about the startup costs of the school at $40,000, and again, I have absolutely no idea what it would cost, but if you all continued, because we've heard a lot from you today, and you all obviously know what you're talking about, but you all are not the ones contracted to get the school going. And with a $40,000 startup, you're going to eat up at least 5 of that in the first month if you were doing consulting services, I'm guessing. And so, yeah. So that's, you know, and that's why, again, I asked the question of the board, is it their intent? Because, again, you all know what you're talking about. So without putting feelings into that.
Go ahead. I mean,
and that's not a question, that's just.
We work with schools that do fundraise, that the minute the application's approved, they start their fundraising efforts, and any funds that they raise, they've been able to keep us in whatever until, you know, it depends on the school situation.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from anybody, for anybody? Yes, Ms. Cuthbert.
I apologize. We talked about PE, but I noticed in the staffing there's no room for an art teacher or music teacher either.
And at this time, again, as part of the integrated curriculum in a small school, those are all things that are they're embedded within the instructional day. Art is not going to be a separate class. Now, in order to do the budget, we don't have, for the first 5 years, we don't have an art teacher in there. That is something that, depending, we would anticipate that as the school gets more established, that we would be able to hire at least a half-time art teacher, if nothing else, to help guide the teachers a little more directly and to support some activities. But as an elementary school of this size, the other thing that cannot be part of your considerations is that the school would apply for the CSP, the Charter Schools Program Grant, from the federal grant through the Florida Department of Education. That can't be part of any of our considerations here because it's not a known factor. But historically, we would anticipate that they would get that grant, and it's a 2 to 3 year substantial support that would help the school get through some of those hurdles. But again, the budget, that's why the budget has been designed so that that's not necessary, but it is out there as an option, as well as other grant opportunities that arise. But
thank you so much. I
Yes,
appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, Ms. Cuthbert.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Haynes.
Mr. And you too, I appreciate your indulgence as well.
Can
That's
I
what
make
I
a
do.
statement
Yes.
instead of a question?
Can you make a statement?
Yes.
Yeah, you can make a statement.
Okay. So. Is it an opinion? No, I'm going to make it. It's going to be factual. It's not.
We have a discussion.
If you make a statement, you're making a finding of fact. You shouldn't be doing that until you hear from everybody.
Yeah.
We're just gathering facts right now. Then
Yeah, there is going to be the time for that. Promise you. All right. Does a board member have any questions for anybody else, though? I know we're looking at these three individuals, but there's a lot of people here with information. They may have answers to some questions you haven't asked. If there are, this would be the time to get that factual answer. Let me throw this question out to you. Could you, in a nutshell, kind of state what is different about this school than the school down the street, the public school? What can you capture that for me? So
the school design itself is unique, perhaps relatively unique. A lot of schools try to do project-based learning. A lot of schools talk about having a whole child approach to learning. A lot of schools talk about cross-disciplinary concept development. This school is putting all of those things together because they marry together so well. What makes this school unique in what we believe is its ability to become a model school for that kind of a program is that, unlike the traditional school down the street that wants to try that has an established staff and has to find volunteers to try something new and has to try to change people's minds about what their job really is and change mindsets, this school has the opportunity to start from scratch and handpick those individuals who, as Lindsay said, have a passion for this model. And the likelihood of success in that situation is much greater. There's a term in project-based learning that's wall-to-wall PBL, not PBL because my social studies teacher works with my reading teacher, but wall-to-wall PBL. This is the culture of the school. It's how things are done. It's the way children think. It's the way the teachers model thinking for them. every classroom that they go to, they're going to be having those same kinds of experiences. So it's almost like immersion in the program, as opposed to when a established larger school tries to make that shift, it can be very challenging.
And in establishing it on the front end and having the opportunity to do that, you don't reach the barriers that schools face when they have to retrofit those concepts into, like Kim said, an existing model with existing staff. In implementing the wall-to-wall PBL and the educational program, there is a broader reach to all students, from students performing below grade level to students who require enrichment to students with disabilities, because of the hands-on approach to instruction. And in doing that and implementing it well, students are able to generalize content areas across discipline and into further grades as they progress and matriculate, in this case, onto middle school. And we really believe that that's a critical element of the school.
Okay, thank you. If other board members don't have questions for the three of you, I don't see any at the moment, you all may relax. And I would like our Mr. Pollard, can you come forward, Nate? You've been sitting back there enjoying the show, and you thought, hey, I'm going to get a pass. No. Mr. Pollard, can you? We're going back and forth on this lease, and so I'm concerned about that. So can I get you, Mr. Sieber made his interpretation first, and then you countered his, and then he countered yours, saying, well, you're both saying the same thing, or neither one of you is wrong, but it's getting kind of muddy from where I sit. So can you take another shot at this, and not so much the as much as clarifying the concept and differentiating what's, because what we're concerned about is what's on the application.
Absolutely.
Not what could have been or should have been, or clarifying it, or this is what we may do. I just want to know what is on the application.
And I think the district's concern, and what we tried to articulate in there, is there was a mention of collateral, and that this collateral was going to come, and it was fixtures or various things at the school building. And the district was trying to find where in the application they were saying what the value of that collateral was, or where they had the authority for this said collateral. And so what the district was going through, and they never found it in the application, is my understanding. And we haven't heard where it's in the application today, where they have this collateral and fixtures in this building that they can set up for collateral for this loan. And we were pulling out language in the lease, which we thought was prohibiting them from using any of these fixtures. And that's where the disagreement has been, as far as whether this lease language allows them to do that. I think what we came up in our rebuttal, it says, well, we still don't know where in the contract it says you have this authority to do it, or what you are pledging up as collateral. And I think what they talked about is they might be purchasing certain things in the future, but we still don't know what those things are, or what the value is, or how that can be used as collateral. So we went to a provision in the lease, and they've disagreed with the interpretation of it, but our concern remains that we don't know what that collateral is.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. All right. Any questions for the district attorney at this time? Okay, wait, Ms. Cuthbert.
Is there anything in the statute that says this charter school has to have a minimum amount for startup?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Ms. Muller, can I ask you to come forward at this time?
Yes.
Hi. So you've heard a lot of conversation here, and a lot of it had to do with money and financing, and this $40,000 startup loan, and the reserve fund balance at the end of year 1 and year 2. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to what you heard and what was said, because I do have concerns about a fund balance of $136, I think it was mentioned, and only a $40,000 startup loan, where we just had a application come in with $1 million, startup loan. So can you
sure
clarify for me?
Yes. I am concerned when remaining in the startup balance is $136. I do feel that that does not provide for contingency. I believe I heard the applicants make a statement that some of it has to do with timing, and they could push back some expenditures such as advertising in the beginning if some contingencies arose. But $40,000 is the least amount that I have seen in these startup budgets. I have not been reviewing the applications for that long, but you are correct that, for instance, SEV had earlier obtained 2 letters for $500,000 each, of which they were projecting $300,000 for their startup. So, you know, without comparing them side by side, I can't say whether that's enough money or not enough money, but my concern was in the end that there was only $136, and that at the end of the first year, their fund balance was still projected to be low. And I didn't see huge amounts of contingency money, you know, that was included. So it's a concern. I'm not saying that they cannot start up a school with that amount of money, but certainly you need to have a plan and alternatives as to where you can avoid expenses if something comes up that, you know, you have to have. I'm still not sure about them saying that they would use collateral money from future purchases when they're needing that $40,000 just to start. So regardless, I'm still not seeing in the application or hearing, regardless of the language in the lease, where they are going to really get that furniture, fixture, and equipment, or substantiation for any fixed assets that they could use or have permission to use from the current building that they are anticipating leasing. And if they're purchasing those furniture and fixtures after they start with FEFP money, well, the $40,000 is needed before they even open the school. So I don't see that being feasible as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Muller before she takes a seat? Okay. Could I ask Ms. Hazel, are you still here, Rachel? Thank you. The application appears to put a lot of, everything is contingent upon when we hire the principal. There's a lot of, the answer is always, well, when we hire the principal, we'll have a curriculum. When we hire the principal, we'll understand what kind of technology we're going to have when we hire the principal. So you were a principal, I was a principal. In this startup school that they are envisioning with the principal hiring all the teachers and developing the curriculum, because they, on their application, said that, well, there's no issue basically because they're going to follow the district curriculum maps. And then our response was curriculum maps aren't a curriculum. They're just the organizational framework. It's not
Right.
the materials. Am I
That's-
correct?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay. So I'm just asking you, when you responded to that section, I was looking at your interview, capacity interview, and I noticed you had concerns about the curriculum piece. Can you elaborate a little more just exactly what those concerns are?
Well, so when you do this, there's a difference between what the rubric itself says and then when you really go in depth with what the curriculum is, and that's exactly the concerns that you just brought up are exactly what we were probing for. Like, is the plan laid out and a principal comes in and implements it, or is the plan going to be made once the principal is hired? And I think if you have the transcripts, it speaks for itself with the answers, because we did ask several questions in that interview process about who would be making those decisions, and the principal, whoever that would be, was the answer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else have a question for Ms. Hazel? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Board members, you have any other questions for anyone at this time? And if not, we can close this part of the process. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Doran just to remind us now how we're shifting gears and what the process is. If you don't mind.
So now having heard all of the information that's been provided by both the district and the applicant, you're free to discuss it, express opinions, debate among yourselves, point out any concerns that you have. Ultimately, from that discussion would come a motion to either approve it, which would be just a straight up motion to approve, or to deny it. If there is a motion to deny, it should reference specifically the rubric and those provisions which were indicated as do not meet expectations or partially meet expectations. In other words, there has to be a factual basis for the denial. So, and that's the evidence that you would have before you. So, unless there's any more questions, that's,
right.
Does that fairly
No,
characterize?
that's great. That's just great. So, all right. So this is the time when, if you wanted to just say how you feel, and you can. I see your fingers up there right away, and I'm glad it's the index finger and not another one. So, go ahead and Ms. Haynes. Well, we got to have a little comic relief in here. It's getting a little tense, and it doesn't need to be. So let's go ahead and go ahead.
So I'm not letting Ms. Cuthbert go first this time.
Yeah.
All right, so I'd like to state some facts. Since there were a lot of questions asked about the PE teacher and the art teacher and the music teacher, I bring to this board the fact that I have a degree in elementary education. And I will state that as getting my undergraduate degree, I was required to learn how to teach PE, art, and music, because there are times that you go into rural areas or small schools and there are not designated PE, art, and music teachers. And I actually did an internship in a rural school where there was no art, music, or PE, and that was my responsibility as a classroom teacher to do that. So I felt like we dwelled a lot on that today, and I just want to state that factually that does happen across the United States, that there are not PE, art, and music teachers. We are fortunate here in Volusia County that we have larger elementary schools with a lot more students, and we have those opportunities, but it doesn't happen everywhere else.
That's true. That's true.
That's all I have to say at the moment.
At the moment, okay. She reserves the right to speak again. Yes, Mr. Colon.
And so my thought process is that I truly believe that the things that were brought up could be overcome. I truly believe that. However, who is going to overcome it? We have a gentleman that serves as a treatment plant operator, an assistant professor of aerospace at Embry-Brittle, owner-operator of Ignite, a CPA, a registration person from a hospital, and an attorney. And I don't believe that the folks who presented today, gosh, if you all were staying, that would be, but you're not. And I don't believe that with $40,000 startup, they can accomplish it because you all are going to go away. And so where I do believe a lot of this is can be overcome between now and a contract, the reality is that the funding, which is even questionable at this point, simply isn't there to keep your amazing company continuing to serve these folks. I am a little bit, this matters. And so if I was sitting on a board and this was a holiday, I would be there. And so having those questions of the governing board and then them not being here, that really says a lot to me. And again, I don't think that with $40,000 they can afford to keep you all, because consultants are not cheap. But you guys did a great job, and I mean, answers came from where you didn't even have them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. Ms. Cuthbert.
You got 2 minutes.
Well,
let the record show the vice chair said you had 2 minutes.
Yeah, I have a lot of saved up from last year. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Haynes. The PE, but Volusia County does provide that for our students. So if they went from a Volusia County school to this charter school, they would lose that. They would not have that expertise in front of them. I'm concerned they're using Volusia County school curriculum. I'm looking, when I read this, I wanted to find something unique and very different, something that would serve our community and be a gem, an absolute gem in the community, much like the one we approved this morning. But by using our same curriculum, not having those separate teachers, and everything depending upon one individual with a few teachers, that concerns me, because the whole school could make or break based on one hiring of one employee. I think the curriculum should come before the school, not the school come first before the curriculum. We do, based on what one of the consultants said about cross-disciplinary coursework, project-based learning, true passionate teachers, we have that too. A lot of our youngsters are doing cross-disciplinary. I did it when I taught a long time ago. So project-based learning is a given. It's what we instituted a couple of years ago. And also the passionate teachers, because they can certainly do what I can't do. I'll stick to my high school kids. I was also somewhat saddened that they didn't have community support here. Where are where's the community support for the school to bring them in? And half of that $40,000 is for advertising. That's half. So if they had a committed group already, for example, one charter school already had a waiting list to come in. If there's no one interested, then they could have saved that $20,000 and put it towards starting the school. And then also in their mission statement on page 1, the mission statement says that the Florida East Coast Charter Schools to provide a framework for teaching and learning that fosters engagement through hands-on project-based learning while incorporating a focus on science and math. Well, to me that sounds like it's STEM. Promotes without a physical ed teacher, social and emotional wealth and health being, where are the programs that foster that mental health and that physical health? You're depending on 15K first and second grade teachers to come up with that, and also citizens. So where are the programs? I would like to see the programs, some of the school-based projects that are already they're thought about. Who are they bringing in? Where are the business partners? So there's an awful lot lacking. There's a start of it, and it's apparent, like what Mr. Colon said, it can be overcome, but it's not in this application. Thank you. Is that 2 minutes?
That was 3.5, but that's okay.
You did very well.
Thank you.
Ms. Wright, do you have a comment?
One quick, I do agree with all of you. The curriculum is a challenge. That's why I asked had they read it, because charter schools don't have to follow that of the district. And I'm like you, I was looking for something creative, and not just creative. They could have used pretty much. There are some curriculums that are totally developed that they could have selected for their school, but that's it.
Yeah. I didn't know whether she's gonna point to me again or not. All right. Well, yeah, I agree with what Mr. Colon said and what Ms. Cuthbert said. Ms. Wright's comments, Ms. Haynes as well. To me, the real lacking areas here were financial and the curriculum. And I can't think of two more important things. I mean, if you're going to start a school, you got to have the money and you got to have a curriculum. And they talk about what could be or what they hope will be, but there really isn't any assurance that we have sitting up here. So how could we, as a board in good faith, put our stamp on it that says, public, go ahead and attend that school. It's going to be amazing. On what basis can we say that? I just don't see it. And just saying it's going to be project-based learning, that's such a vague general term that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So that to me is not a thing that is unique, that a thing that distinguishes a school. You're looking at Ormond Beach Elementary, which was graded A-rated school, Tomoka Elementary rated A, and they're right in the middle of those two schools. I just don't see anything that was presented in this application that suggests that they're going to be offering something that those two schools either do not or cannot. So those are my thoughts on it. I want to thank the applicant. Yeah, and we need to at this time make a decision, because it's that time. If you are in favor of it, then you just say that and you make a motion in that direction. If you are not in favor of it, you have to be more specific. So you have to I suggest you go to the executive summary and indicate exactly because of the areas which either did not meet the criteria or did not partially meet the criteria, that you state those for the record, and then whoever, if there is a second to that motion, then we proceed on from there. So the floor is now open for a motion.
Okay. The superintendent recommends denial of the Florida East Coast Charter School application.
Mr. Chair, I move that we deny Florida East Coast Charter School based on the following. Partially meets 4, standard 4, 16, 1821 and does not meet standard 20 and 22.
Okay, thank you. That was Ms. Wright making the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And that was seconded by Ms. Cuthbert. Board members, we can have further discussion at this point. Is there anyone that'd like to discuss?
I just
Mr.
have one
Colon?
comment, guys. You all are this close, and I mean that.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? All right, seeing none, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. So the motion to deny is approved unanimously.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Doran.
Okay, so based on the denial, the statute does require that the applicant be provided in writing the basis for the denial within 10 days of today. So I would ask that there be a motion delegating that responsibility to me to prepare and forward that to the applicant within the 10-day period of time.
Okay. Do I have a motion to what our attorney just said?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Colon, and that was seconded by Ms. Wright. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, like sign, and the motion carries unanimously to get that out there within 10 days. Is that what you said?
Within 10 days.
10 days. Is there any further business, Mr. Superintendent?
This time, sir.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.